Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. Wow, this is going to be an exciting episode. So, we have been talking about organizational learning for the last couple of weeks, which means that we think this is a pretty important topic. But one critical factor that many organizations don't think about or have as a resource, but may not be utilizing or thinking about it in terms of the larger thought on organizational learning is your consultants. How can they facilitate and make sure that you are becoming a learning organization? In order to do that, it would be great to explore how we make sure that our businesses are learning organizations. So stay tuned as we talk about and we continue our series on becoming a learning organization.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee Time with Masterminds. My name is Peta Blakely, and I'm the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I am Cynthia Rojas, founder and principal of To Your Growth.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I'm Rebecca Tuttle, founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good.
Hi, everyone. Look at us. Look who's live. We can touch each other.
Same room.
For the first time
Yes.
in Coffee Time history.
Yes.
We're broadcasting from the same room.
We are. Hey, Rebecca, how are you? Oh, we don't hear you, Rebecca. I think Rebecca's having audio issues.
I'm here.
Oh, yay. How are you?
Great. I was on mute. Sorry about that, everyone.
That's okay. Welcome to our listeners, to our friends in Australia and all over the world. And if you are joining us, please let us know that you are and where you're from, as we always like to hear where people are listening from. So, Rebecca, we're live.
I wish I could jump through the screen. I'm so jealous. You look beautiful there.
This is live TV. Welcome, Priscilla.
Oh my God, we have the dogs with us. Oh, this is so funny. It's so much fun. We're gonna talk at the end of the episode why we are together. The first time of Coffee Time history. But Rebecca, you remember last week we left with a question on the table?
That's right. It was a juicy one.
Yeah. So I thought that that's where we would begin. So just to bring our listeners up to speed, because not everybody listens to the episodes back to back, Peter was not with us. So it was just Rebecca and I, and we were talking about learning from our funders. And one of the questions that came up was, what happens when you have a major donor whose vision is not aligned with the organization's programming? And so Rebecca had a good answer to that, and I'll give you a moment to respond. But then we gave the concrete example, right? So I'll give you that, and then Rebecca, I want you to give us your thoughts. But what if we were providing training for adults, and we had a major donor who said, I want to sponsor your childcare during training, and we are not set up for that infrastructure, nor was the organization even thinking about providing childcare. What is one to do in that situation?
So where do you want me to begin? With that question or the previous?
So what would be your advice? And if you want to take us back to what you said last week about when major donors tend to do this, and they're not aligned with our programming, but they have a vision and they have a passion, and they want to help invest in our program.
Well, that's where the transparency comes in. You want to be as open and honest with funders as possible. You could say to them, their priorities and initiatives that have shifted, you are moving in that direction. Maybe not right now, it's a good fit, but just letting them know that that's an important initiative, an important priority to your organization. And if they can't fund you right now, do they have any suggestions with how you might be fundable with them in the future? We should be aligning ourselves with foundations that are, if we were to look in the mirror, we almost see our work through them back at us. So if it's a foundation that we can't really see that, and we're trying to mission chase, then I wouldn't recommend even wasting that funder's time in that discussion, because if they're moving in a new direction, I mean, there's so many things that philanthropists do behind the scenes. They don't just say one day, oh, I think we'll fund this next year or next month.
Right.
There's so many inner workings there. Yeah, so that's what I would say. And they may recommend you to another funder if they can't fund you right now.
That's such a good point, that the funders have a theory of change too. They want to fund this activity for a specific reason.
Right. So there's a lot of alignment
with that. Yeah, if you're not aligned with that. Yeah.
There's a lot of alignment that has to happen. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so my solution was find a neighborhood partner who wants to provide childcare and direct the funding to them, right? And tell the funder, that's a great idea. You know, we have done some research and we understand that childcare is a hurdle for our participants. We're not set up to do childcare, but we've got this great partner in the neighborhood who does childcare. Why don't you fund them, and we will align our programs so that we can have childcare during our program.
Right.
And that way it's a win for everybody, right?
Or you can still fund us, and we'll use it as a opportunity to partner.
Yeah, to buy that resource.
Which I think donors love. I think they love partnership. You're thinking, Peter, we don't have to do something we're not good at. We're not good at childcare. You know, that takes licensing. That's an expertise.
Right, I was going to say the risks associated and the insurance and all the logistics. And, it doesn't make sense. This is actually a red flag for funders. They're really looking to see, are you just doing this because you want to fit in here or do this? Or is it really a right fit for you? So I always go back to, is it a right fit of funding? Is it a right fit of opportunity? And if you ever say no in either of those scenarios, then it's probably not a right fit. But collaborating and supporting others who are doing that, and it is a right fit, absolutely, that's the way to go.
When we were talking about it this morning, and I was talking about, it is theory of change alignment, right? And how important that is, right? And I was talking about this example that there was an organization that did soccer, youth soccer, and they did it from a positive youth development framework. So we want to get young people together. We want to build community. We want to build healthy self-image. We want to have them interacting with caring adults. And then that leads to a whole lot of good outcomes. So they were really a positive youth development program with a soccer hook, but it could have been any activity. Right. They just wanted to get young people engaged. They had a funding strand that came from an anti-obesity program that wanted to fund soccer, right? As a physical activity and health.
Makes sense. Makes sense. It's not that far off.
No, right. You think it makes sense. You're like, we got a field, we got coaches. They want to fund our soccer.
Kids are running around.
Right. It looks like the same thing, but they did not have theory of change alignment. So they have this program, the funders asking for extra, what feels to them like extra outcomes, right? Yep. If all they're interested in is kids feeling good about themselves and interacting with caring adults, why are they going to report on something like, BMI? It just felt totally out of alignment. The staff couldn't understand it, that the hearts weren't behind it. That's not a bad program. It just wasn't their program.
Yeah.
And at the end of the process, they ended up deciding that they just needed to send that program over to somebody else that did health, because even though it was activity aligned, it was not theory of change aligned for them. And it just was not there.
Or area of expertise. There's a certain area of expertise you need to measure BMI and all of that. Yeah.
Well, it's also weird for the participant, right? Because now I'm going to play soccer, and all of a sudden you have me on a scale.
Right.
And nobody prepared me for this, and now I didn't come to you to get on the scale.
Right, exactly.
So
I just came here to run around and be with my peers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we also wanted to talk about is how do we, meaning consultants, remain a learning organization, right? So Rebecca, you,
Mhm.
Peter, and I all own our own businesses, and we are the founders of our consulting firms. And we too should be focusing, or we should be wanting to be a learning organization. And I thought we should talk about that as we continue to give examples and hopefully impart this knowledge to leaders as well. So we can start with you, Peter.
Sure.
What do you do to remain a learning, to keep
Right.
Blakely Consulting a learning organization?
So I do some kind of like reflection activities,
Mhm.
right? I think about the projects that I have, how they're going. I try to
Mhm.
measure things like how much time am I putting into this project? Did I like it? Was the client happy? All those kinds of things. So there's sort of a feedback system there. How satisfied am I in my business?
Yeah.
And then I'm also like constantly interacting with learning groups, like the three of us are a learning group where we're talking about our businesses and our practices and learning from each
Well,
other.
we're a
and
mastermind. We're
Yeah.
a mastermind. Let's
We are a mastermind. We're very effective one. I'm in another mastermind group that's specifically evaluators, where we're talking about our businesses. I'm often like hiring coaches and consultants about different things like productivity and time management and bookkeeping and video marketing, right? Everything.
Yes,
So I'm like
yes.
constantly like reaching out to other people to fill in all of these things.
Yeah. And so, Rebecca, what do you do to ensure that Grant right now is a learning organization?
Well, I love to read, and
Yes,
try to
yes,
read.
you do.
I try to read 2 to 3 books a week if I can, just for interest or my own learning. But also, the more I read, the better I write. And I can also extract a lot of ideas out of books, business books, writing books. I've been reading a lot of copyright and neuroscience books lately for, you know, how the brain processes information. And then the copyright side of it is, how do you then disseminate that information that's in a way that attracts your reader? So I also teach, and I also take classes myself. I love to learn. I think the more we can absorb and the more knowledge that we can fine tune in our field, the better product and the better person we become to give that to our clients.
And I think, I think this is an element that is neglected, right? I mean, I can't think of any job I ever had in the past where I accessed this much professional development, right? And I mean, that's true. That a big part of that is that, I control the entire budget of this organization, right? And
Doesn't that feel nice?
It is nice. It's better to be the whole boss of a small budget.
I like that.
I think we overlook this for employees. How many organizations, like maybe one class a year, or maybe something that everybody is participating in, as opposed to what you specifically need in that moment for your job, right? So I really think there's an opportunity missed there.
And so, I mean, it's one of the great things about being a consultant. You have to want to learn. I've met many consultants who said that they had, when they were consulting, well, I've met a lot of former consultants who have said that when they were consulting, they read the paper every day and they did research, and you don't seem to have that time in another environment.
No, it's hard to, excuse us. You might have in another environment. But no, it's hard to time block. It's hard to go in your office and say, "Oh, I'm reading."
Right, because people think you're slacking.
Yeah, right.
You're reading Facebook.
Look busy.
Yeah. So Rebecca's telling us that we should face the camera because the audio is coming in and out.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome. Good old private chat.
So
are you just going to say?
So normally I do the show from my office where I can close the office door. Today we're not. So Henny and Priscilla are really interested in what's going on here.
They like being on television.
Yeah.
So I think this show, a key component of learning is also the ability to reflect. We've talked about that a lot, right? And being able to reflect in a objective way, meaning non-judgmental, where you really can talk about or think about what went well, what did not go well. Notice I started with what went well because we tend to go into what does not work, but let's also focus on what does work. And I think this show also helps us to keep our businesses as learning organizations because we're constantly talking to people. We too are getting advice on what type of show to have or what topics to talk through, talk on, what topics to highlight. And then we have to do research on it. Not every topic, not all of this information is just from the top of our heads. We also want to give you things that are in the literature that have been proven or talked about by other scholars. So this is a learning activity.
Yeah, it really is. And then we bring on all of those guests,
Mm-hmm.
and we always learn things from our guests. So it's a process of continuous learning for us.
Yeah. So Rebecca,
also-
you've also done some expansion beyond Coffee Time, and you also host your own show with other nonprofits. And so you must also think of this as a really key learning part of your work.
Absolutely. I love to listen and invite guests on my show just to talk. It's grant writing for good. So if you're out there doing good things in the world, then we want to hear about it. And there's really no other agenda attached. There's no sales pitch. Because a lot of times when we sign up for free things that we want to learn, there's always a sale at the end, or most of the time. And when you just invite guests on our show or my other show, just listening to them talk about their experience, sharing best practices in the work, obstacles, how to overcome them. One of the things that I really like about our show and just our work, the three of us, the way we conduct our consulting practices is we focus on what a lot of other people do not, and that is the implementation. Because it's great to have all this information, but now how do you maximize it? How do you implement it? And that's one of the things that I'm always listening for from our guests and the content that we provide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there has been another thing that we are doing to ensure that our learning moves us forward and we can continue to bring this content to our viewers. But do you want to tell our viewers what we're doing?
What we're doing?
Yeah.
We're working on a book. We decided that we had so much great content here, right? That we have been interviewing leaders of mission-based organizations and other experts for 2 years now about
91 episodes.
Yeah,
That's
right?
so crazy.
Wow.
About leading through COVID. And there is so much interesting information there that we're going to try to synthesize it into a book. So so now we're learning how to write a book.
Which we have learned is very difficult.
Yes.
So that's been interesting. But Rebecca's an author, so we are a step ahead. You were an author of 2 books, Rebecca?
3. I have
3.
books.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So and that's what have you learned, Peter, so far? Because you started, right? And so we're all chipping in, but
so here, and I read like a lot of books that I think are written in the tone that we'd like this book to be, right? Useful, friendly, accessible. But I'm kind of trained as an academic. So when I started writing this, of course, I did the academic thing and I started by writing up the findings. And then I realized, like, this is going to make a terrible book, right? You know, this is, to me, this is the meat. This is what I want you to know. But we have to go back and tell the story. We've got to create a book that is going to stand alone and that's going to like bring people along in this journey. And hopefully a book that's going to be read a few years in the future when people aren't still living through COVID, right? And so some of the things that we take for granted, like, you know, we talked to dozens of people and we never saw any of them face to face, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
right, that we did all of this through screens, that this is the first time we have worked together in the same room, even though we've been working together
For 2 years.
for 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So we have to explain a lot of that in the book.
Yeah. And so that's interesting. Another thing is through this process, we've been talking about the learning.
Yeah,
So it's
right.
also enhances. So when Peter said, okay, guys, I'm going to get started on the book, something we've been talking about for a really long time, by the way. I thought, well, maybe I can help her. And how can I do this? And so I decided that I would come to her. And I wanted to share the experience. I wanted to be able to be in this space because I know that I do better when I'm around people to embark on this really difficult task that I've never done. And we've spent the past week just talking about all of the learning, reviewing things that I think we almost forgot, right? And we're now reading things that people said and we're like, wow, this is powerful. And the idea is not just to recount the pandemic, but to use what we learn for future crises. Because the truth of the matter is, you know, our new normal includes this heightened complexity.
Right. I mean, we know that there are going to be more and more climate-related disasters and pandemic-related disasters. And what was different about COVID was it affected the entire world. The entire world was in this one landscape level crisis. And what's unique about that is the organization, the people who work in the organization, and the community you serve are all living through the same crisis.
Yes.
Right. Which is really, really different from, you know, being an aid worker who leaves a house that's still standing to go and serve in a flooded area. Right. Now we're talking about people whose own houses have flooded, whose own family members are missing, right, trying to work through that. So this is going to be and then this is going to be more and more common. So we think it's really important and that there are some lessons from COVID that we can take forward.
Yeah. And I read, go ahead, Rebecca.
It was just reminding me, do you remember our very first episode, how nervous we were? And then we had audio issues. And then I made that follow-up. I'm sorry. When I look back on that, I'm like, you know what? If we did that today, like we hear your dog and I had audio problems on mute, right? We wouldn't even think about making a follow-up. Oops, we made a mistake. Just the confidence, just the skill that we've built doing the show. I think it's pretty amazing. Yeah, but people I think I was just gonna say, I think what's gonna be most intriguing about our book is that it's real. This is really how we worked through COVID and created this amazing, amazing product that is Coffee Time with Masterminds. I think it will ease people's fears if they want to try something like this, give them reassurance that they're not the only ones facing these challenges. I'm super excited for this book to come out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great.
And I met a leader recently, and they had told me they were working at a museum. They were an executive director of a museum when the pandemic hit. And so the museum had to shut down, like many of our arts organizations and arts and culture industry. And what he started doing is documenting everything. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Why were you so compelled? And he said, well, I work at a museum, and so I know that documenting what's happening is important for history. And that stayed with me. I'm like, wow, thank God, right, that somebody's documenting this. And then I spoke to another leader who documented every hurdle she had with her team over infection control, which if we remember in the very beginning, we were up against an a virus that could have killed us. So, and I know I tend to be a little dramatic, but this was our world, right? And now we're,
Well, it did kill a lot of
yeah.
people.
Did it kill
That's
a lot of people?
Yeah.
So Peter looked it up, and it's we lost about 2.5 million lives during this. So this organization and its leader documented all of those meetings. That's beautiful. And we've done the same thing, right, through our shows. And what we've been encouraging leaders to do is document your learnings. There is nothing lost. There's no time lost in documenting what you were learning, because it is extraordinary to then be able to go back. And now when we make the connection between what happened 2 years ago and how to apply it today, it seems easy. It's like, oh, of course we would do that now, right? But you can also easily forget. So documentation is really important to organizational
learning.
learning.
Such a good point that you're living through history.
I know.
I mean, I think I had this false idea that, like, history was the past and it ended, right?
Yeah.
And to realize, like, we're still creating history, and that in a few years we are going to look back on COVID as a major part of our history, and try to make meaning of it, like try to reflect on what the lessons were.
Yeah. In the storytelling world, it's called being in your story.
Yeah.
So there are times where you're not ready to tell your story or share your story because you're still living in it. The story hasn't ended.
Right.
And so that's what you're talking about. I think we have a comment.
Yeah.
Ma says, "Are you guys in person? How cool!"
Yes. Yay. So just in case, Ma is a weekly listener. She comes in on every show. Just in case you've just arrived, the co-hosts at Coffee Time are writing a book. We have begun. And so because I need to be around people, I decided to come to Virginia to be with Peter and write in her space. Rebecca is writing it in her space, and it'll all come together and be amazing.
I think one of the things that we learned, it's incredible what we have all accomplished over tools like Zoom over the last 2 years, but having this kind of time, like unlimited time together for reflection. So I think there will be more writing retreats.
Yes.
It's really helpful.
Yes. We'll make that part of the learning.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca.
I'll do it in Florida next time.
Yeah.
Yes. Rebecca, I don't know how you do it. 3 books. I think that's amazing. This is not easy. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It is. It's a lot of work, and
It is, but it's so worth it. I think my first book, I started writing. You know what? I said to myself, I'm going to write a book. My husband said, "Rebecca, you have so much information in there. Why don't you write a book about it?" And so I said, okay. So I started in November, and I applied to a workshop as a presenter and told them I had a book, and they accepted me. And the workshop was in March, and I said, "Oh my goodness, if I don't produce a published book by March, I'm in trouble." And I did it, and I just gave myself a deadline. So for us, I think we should give ourselves a deadline and just go at it. And if the deadline is 6 months from now, that's okay too. But what happened when the first person bought my book, I couldn't let go of it. I was so scared, not that the content wasn't good, but scared of that person's feedback on the book. I was timid about it, but it was so great. And they've been just flying out the door ever since. So I know we'll have the same success with our book.
It feels very, very, very close to you, and sending it out in the world on its own.
Yeah. No, it does. It does.
But this is a great way for us to use your language, to get out of the story. Right?
Yeah.
To reflect back on these last couple of years, highlight some themes, and create a product, I think is a very useful way for us to close this.
Yes.
And, sort of document what we got out of it and move on.
I'm already thinking about book number 2, And
yes, the more we write, the more we have ideas for other books.
Yeah, and so Rebecca, I don't know if this has happened to you, but this idea of, okay, this would be too much to put in book 1, so we actually need another book And
sequel.
so we're thinking about that as we building book number 1. So
Yeah.
did you have that experience also in your writing with your books?
When I did my first copy, I edited out that extra content. I wanted my book to be simplified, and I
Yeah.
took a lot of the more advanced information and I said, I'm going to put it over here and reuse it in another way, building classes around it, and also my second book. And so, yes, that did happen. And that's all right. It's actually exciting to see you finish one product and then you have some content to start
Right.
anew.
They got the content for second
Always
product.
starting from scratch.
Yeah.
We have 89 episodes to date, and if this book takes 4 months, we would have 100 and something episodes. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be a great
And it's
journey.
incredible how dense they are. I mean, I'm really, really appreciating going back and reading the transcripts of these shows and how packed with information they are.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Rebecca. Oh, Myra did say next stop is the Oprah Winfrey Show. Yes.
That's the plan.
Oh, that is so the plan. So the plan. And she has a Facebook show just like us.
Does she really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's live on Facebook. It's called Soul Sundays or something like that. Yeah, we could
Maybe
align
we
that
could get
with
my
coffee
show.
time. Yeah, sure. Oprah, give us a call. We are ready for you.
Well, it is possible. I was on Dr. Oz. It is possible.
There you go.
There you go. Oh, I'm gonna ask you about that. I love Dr. Oz. All right. Well, this is us, and next week we will continue our conversations on Coffee Time with Masterminds, and we will keep you up to date or updated on our
progress.
on our writing progress. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, everybody.